My name is Serena Cole. I'm 37 years old, and 20 years ago, my parents stood in our kitchen in Dallas, Texas, and told me I was no longer their daughter. I was 16, I was 10 weeks pregnant, and I was wearing my school uniform, the one my mother had ironed that very morning. She didn't throw a single dish. She didn't raise her voice. She just set her coffee cup down on the counter, looked at me the way you look at a stain you've already decided you can't get out, and said 4 words: "You need to leave." That night, I walked out with a duffel bag, $43, and a child growing inside me that my parents had already decided didn't exist. They told their friends I'd gone to study abroad. For 20 years, they told that story. For 20 years, I let them. But then, 3 weeks ago, they showed up at the door of my home in Austin. Gray hair, Mercedes. My father in the same kind of pressed Oxford shirt he'd worn every Saturday of my childhood. They wanted to meet their grandson, the grandson they'd been describing to 300 of Dallas's most important people for the better part of a year. A boy they called brilliant. A boy they said was carrying on the Hargrove name. A boy who had never, not once, existed. And what they found instead, what I showed them in front of everyone they'd spent 50 years impressing, changed everything. Stay with me, because this is the story I've been waiting 20 years to tell. Dallas, Texas, October 2004. I was Serena Lynn Hargrove, second child of Robert and Patricia Hargrove of Lakewood Hills, sophomore at St. Agnes Academy for Girls, member of the choir, B-plus student trying, unsuccessfully, to become an A student, because A students got dinner table conversation, and B students got nods. On paper, we were a portrait. My father was a partner at Hargrove and Whitmore, a corporate litigation firm that had his name on the building. My mother chaired the Lakewood Ladies Auxiliary and sold luxury real estate with a smile so practiced it looked biological. We attended Cornerstone Fellowship Church every Sunday, sat in the 4th row from the front, always the 4th row, never the 3rd, never the 5th, and shook hands with the pastor on the way out like it was a business transaction. Which, now that I think about it, it was. We had a family portrait above the fireplace, professional photographer, matching outfits in blue and cream. My brother Derek, 22, already in his 3rd year at UT Medical School, standing with his hand on my father's shoulder. Me on the left edge of the frame, smiling the smile I'd practiced, the one that didn't show too many teeth, because my mother once told me it looked eager. I spent most of my childhood trying not to look eager. Derek was the obvious favorite. I knew it the way you know the weather, not because someone told you, but because you just feel it in everything. My father went to every one of Derek's baseball games. He forgot my choir concert twice in one semester. My mother kept Derek's high school track trophies on the mantle for years. She kept my honor roll certificates in a drawer. A drawer. I don't say this for sympathy. I say it because it matters later. It explains a lot about what I did and didn't believe about myself by the time I was 16. And it explains why, when I found the one person who looked at me like I was worth paying attention to, I held on like my life depended on it. Because at the time, I think it did. I met Jalen Brooks on a Thursday in September 2004 at the Austin Street Public Library. I know. My parents sent me to St. Agnes, which had its own library, 2, actually. But the school library closed at 4 p.m., and the public library stayed open until 8. And I had a habit of saying late, because home before 6 meant the empty house, and home after 6 meant the dinner performance. I preferred the library. Jalen attended Jefferson High 3 blocks away. He was 17, tall, quiet in the way that means someone is actually paying attention rather than just waiting for their turn to speak. He worked afternoons at his uncle's auto body shop on Commerce Street, and smelled perpetually of motor oil and whatever soap he used to try to cover it, which was Irish Spring. And for years afterward, that smell would undo me completely. He found me in the history section on the Thursday afternoon, sitting on the floor because all the chairs were taken, crying over a paper I'd gotten back with a 74 on it. Not because a 74 was devastating, because my mother's first question would be, what did Derek get on his papers when he was your age? Jalen sat down on the floor across from me. He didn't say anything dramatic. He just said, "Hey, you okay?" Like it was the simplest question in the world. I hadn't been asked that in a long time. We talked for 2 hours that day about school, about families, about what we wanted our lives to look like. He wanted to open his own shop someday. I said I wanted to do something with design. I didn't know what kind yet, just that I loved the way spaces could feel like entirely different worlds depending on how you arrange them. He said that sounded like a real thing. My parents had always implied it sounded like a hobby. We dated quietly for 6 weeks. Quietly because I knew exactly what my parents would say about a boy from a public school whose family didn't have a last name that appeared in any of their social circles. Jalen knew that too. He never pushed me to introduce him. He understood, the way people who've been quietly dismissed their whole lives understand, what it means to exist in the margins of someone else's world. October 28th, 2004. I stared at the plastic stick in the bathroom of a Chevron station 2 miles from my school. 2 lines. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped it twice. I sat on the floor of that bathroom stall for 22 minutes. I know because I kept checking my phone, watching the time change, as if more minutes would somehow change what I was looking at. I was 10 weeks along. I hadn't known. When I told Jalen that night, he went very still for a moment. Then he reached across the table at the diner where we'd met, a booth in the back, away from the windows so no one from school would see us, and he held both of my hands in his. "Whatever we decide," he said, "we decide together. You're not doing this alone." I wanted so badly to believe that was enough. But I knew my parents. I knew that the first thing my father would ask wasn't, "How are you?" It would be, "What will people say?" Sunday, November 7th, 2004, 6:48 p.m. My mother had made brisket. The table was set the way it always was, cloth napkins, candles on Sundays, water glasses filled before anyone sat down. Derek was home for the weekend. He'd brought his girlfriend, Camille, who laughed at all my father's jokes a half-second too late, which meant she was performing just like the rest of us. I'd been rehearsing what I was going to say for 4 days. I had tried to think of the right moment, the right words, the right angle that might make this land softly. There was no such angle. I knew that. But you tell yourself there is because the alternative is too terrifying to face head on. I set down my fork. "I need to tell you something." The table didn't go quiet immediately. My father kept cutting his brisket. My mother looked up with the mild, patient expression she used when I was about to say something she had already categorized as unimportant. "I'm pregnant." The fork stopped. Derek looked at his plate. Camille looked at the candle. My mother's face didn't crumble. It froze. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Not explosion, just absolute stillness, like a system shutting down. My father's voice, when it came, was very quiet. Not a question, a procedure. "His name is Jalen Brooks. He goes to Jefferson High." My mother said it like a diagnosis. "He's a good person. He wants—" "What does his family do?" My father again. "He lives with his uncle. He works at an auto shop." Silence. The particular kind of silence that has weight to it. My father put his fork down. He aligned it with the edge of his plate with one deliberate motion, the way he did in depositions when he was about to say something that would end a case. "You have 2 options. You handle this quietly, and this conversation never happened. Or you keep it, and you are no longer part of this family." "Robert," my mother started, "I will not have this family's name attached to this situation. Not in this community, not after everything we've built." I looked at Derek. He looked at the table. "I'm keeping my baby." My father stood. He was very calm. That was the part no one believes when I tell it, how calm he was. No yelling, no throwing things, just the cold, organized removal of an inconvenient variable. "Then you have until 9 o'clock to pack what you need." My mother walked out of the dining room without another word. She did not look back. 8:54 p.m., November 7th, 2004. I had a duffel bag. I had $43 from babysitting. I had my school ID, a library card, a half-empty bottle of prenatal vitamins I'd bought 2 days earlier from a Walgreens 2 towns over because I didn't want anyone to recognize me. My mother opened the front door. Not my father. My mother. She pointed outside without speaking. Derek was at the top of the stairs. I saw him. He saw me see him. He did not come down. I walked to the curb and I called Jalen from the cell phone my parents paid for, knowing it would be the last call I made on it before they cut the line. He answered on the second ring. They kicked me out. 13 minutes later, his uncle's Silverado pulled up. Jalen got out before it had fully stopped. He wrapped both arms around me, and I stood on the curb outside the house I'd grown up in, and I sobbed into his shoulder until I had nothing left. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you, Serena." We had $63 combined, a truck that burned oil, and nowhere to go. And then Ms. Anita Reeves opened her front door. She was our neighbor from 3 houses down. 64 years old, retired school librarian. The only person on our block who talked to the landscaping crews by name and left bottles of water on her porch for the mail carrier in July. She'd seen me standing at the curb. She'd watched long enough to understand. She met us at her door in a bathrobe and reading glasses, looked at my duffel bag and my red eyes, and said, "You'll sleep in the guest room tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out the next step." She didn't ask for an explanation. She just opened the door. I have never forgotten that. 2 weeks later, Jalen found us a 1-bedroom apartment in Austin. $510 a month, second floor of a converted Victorian off South Congress, above a dry cleaner that closed at 5 and a hair salon that opened at 7, and the walls were thin enough to hear both. It was ours. My parents had their family attorney draft a formal letter of disinheritance. I know the exact date because my father sent it certified mail, return receipt requested. December 2nd, 2004. I had to sign for it. 3 pages, single-spaced, notarized. It stated that Serena Lynn Hargrove voluntarily forfeited all interest in the Hargrove family estate, that the Hargrove family accepted no legal, financial, or moral obligation to the aforementioned party, or to any dependent thereof. Any dependent thereof. My daughter who was still 12 weeks away from even having a name, reduced to 3 words in a legal document. I signed the receipt and kept the letter. I have kept it for 20 years. Maya Renee Cole was born on June 14, 2005, at St. David's Medical Center in Austin. 6 pounds, 11 ounces, 10 fingers, 10 toes. Her father's serious eyes and a little ridge across the bridge of her nose that I recognized immediately as mine. She came into the world furious, screaming at full volume from the first second, and I thought, good, stay loud. Never let anyone tell you to be quieter than you actually are. Jalen cried. I'd never seen him cry before. He held her like she was something sacred, which, to him, she was. We named her Maya because it meant water and strength, and because we needed both. The first 4 years were survival, plain and simple. Jalen worked double shifts at a body shop in South Austin. I finished my GED at night while Maya slept in a bouncy seat beside the kitchen table. We split a box of mac and cheese 3 ways and called it Tuesday. I learned to stretch $40 of groceries across 9 days. I learned to sew. I learned that pride is a luxury you can't afford when your daughter needs new shoes and your bank account has $11 in it. I sent my parents a birth announcement. I didn't know why. Some stubborn piece of me that hadn't accepted what they were. No response. I sent a photograph on Maya's first birthday. Silence. By her second birthday, I had stopped sending anything. I had a daughter who needed all of me. I couldn't keep offering myself to people who'd made clear they wanted none of me. That was the last time I reached out. For 17 years. March 4th, 2012. Maya was 6. She was in first grade at Becker Elementary and had recently become obsessed with butterflies and the solar system simultaneously, which meant our apartment walls were covered in both. She was missing her 2 front teeth and had taken to announcing the gaps proudly, like accomplishments. Jalen had been promoted to crew foreman at a commercial construction company 8 months earlier. It was the thing he was most proud of. He called his uncle the day it happened, talked for 45 minutes. He bought Maya a butterfly kit to celebrate, the kind where you mail away for caterpillars. On March 4th, a scaffolding failure on a job site on the east side of Austin sent 3 workers to the hospital. Jalen Brooks was 24 years old. He did not make it to the hospital. The officer who came to my door was young, couldn't have been more than 25 himself, and he held his hat in both hands and told me in a voice that was trying very hard to stay professional. I don't remember sitting down, but I must have, because the next memory I have is being on the kitchen floor with Maya in my lap, asking me why I was crying, and I couldn't tell her the truth yet, so I just held her and breathed and tried to stay intact for long enough to figure out how to tell a 6-year-old that her father wasn't coming home. The life insurance from his employer paid out $18,500. That was it. $18,500 for 24 years of the kindest, most decent person I had ever known. I was 23 years old, single mother, 1 child. $18,500 and an apartment I couldn't afford alone. I want to be honest with you about that period because people like to skip over it. I was not okay. I was not strong every day. There were mornings I sat in my car in the parking lot of Maya's school for 20 minutes after drop-off because I didn't know how to go back into a life that had his absence in every room. But Maya needed me, and that need was, some days, the only rope I had. So I held it. Even before Jalen died, I had been doing small design and event projects on the side, helping neighbors style their apartments for listing photos, decorating for a friend's quinceañera, helping a local restaurant redesign their dining room layout for $300 and a month of free lunch. I had an eye for spaces. I always had. The way color could change the emotional temperature of a room. The way proportion and light could make something cramped feel open, something ordinary feel considered. After Jalen died, I threw myself into it completely. Not because I had a business plan, because I needed somewhere to put the energy that grief was generating. And manual labor and creative problem solving were the only things that kept my brain from running in circles at 2 a.m. By 2014, I had a name, Ember & Co. Event Design, and a website Jalen's cousin built me for free. By 2016, I had a reputation. In 2017, I met Dr. Carol Whitfield. She was 54, recently retired as Chief Marketing Officer of a mid-sized national hospitality brand, and she'd hired me to redesign the event spaces in the boutique hotel she'd just purchased in East Austin as a retirement project. We argued for 40 minutes on the first day about the color palette for the main lobby. She offered me a mentorship contract at the end of the meeting. "You have instinct," she told me flatly. "You don't have structure. I can give you structure. You cannot give someone instinct. So this arrangement benefits me more than you, and I prefer things to be honest." Carol was nothing like my parents. She said exactly what she meant every time. It was startling. And then it was the most valuable thing in my life. With her guidance and a $60,000 SBA loan I applied for 3 times before it was approved, I incorporated Ember & Co. officially in 2018. 2019, 6 employees. Revenue, $800,000. 2021, 11 employees. Revenue, $1.9 million. 2022, I moved into a standalone studio in East Austin with a glass front office, a design showroom, and a conference room with a coffee bar that Maya picked out. She was 16 by then. She'd started doing mock floral arrangements in my sample room on weekends. She had her father's steady hands and my eye for composition. I would catch her sometimes, standing in the showroom adjusting a centerpiece by millimeters, completely absorbed, and it would steal my breath. Not just because she was beautiful, but because she was free. She didn't have anything to prove. She just loved the work. I had spent so long trying to earn my right to exist. She didn't know how to do anything but exist fully, and it was the greatest thing I'd ever made. 2023. Austin Business Monthly ran a cover profile. From teen mom to market leader, Serena Cole's 20-year overnight success. The journalist, a woman named Priya Khatri, spent 3 days with me. I told her everything: the pregnancy at 16, being cut off, losing Jalen, raising Maya alone, building the business year by year. I didn't name my parents, not to protect them, because Maya was 17, and I didn't want strangers connecting her to people who had tried to erase her before she was born. The article was shared over 15,000 times. 2024, 21 employees. Revenue, $4.8 million. A waiting list of corporate clients and a feature in Architectural Digest Southwest. My daughter was 19 years old, a sophomore at UT Austin, majoring in environmental psychology, the study of how spaces affect human behavior. Because of course she was. 20 years of silence from Robert and Patricia Hargrove. Until October. Thursday, October 17th, 2024, 7:12 p.m. I had just gotten home from a site visit at a tech company's new Austin campus. A contract worth $1.1 million for full interior event space design. My mind was running through stone finish samples and acoustic panel specifications when I pulled onto my street and saw the car. White Cadillac Escalade. Texas plates, but something about it felt wrong. Wrong neighborhood, wrong posture, the way it was parked slightly too carefully, like someone who didn't know the street. 2 figures on my front porch. I sat in my driveway for a full minute with the engine running. The man was older than I expected. Stooped slightly, gray at the temples, a little less imposing than the version I'd been carrying in my memory for 2 decades. The woman stood perfectly straight, back rigid, hands folded. That posture I had spent my childhood trying and failing to replicate. Robert and Patricia Hargrove, my parents. I turned off the engine. I sat for another 30 seconds. I thought about driving away, going to Carol's, calling Maya, pretending this wasn't happening on the sidewalk of the life I'd built without them. But I was 37 years old. I owned a company. I had raised a daughter alone through grief and struggle and the kind of poverty my parents had never once faced. I was not going to run. I got out of the car and I walked toward them. My father spoke first. He looked at my house, the landscaping I'd designed myself, the Audi in the drive, the front door I'd refinished in a deep teal I'd picked out with Maya on a Saturday morning. Serena. A pause. You've done well. Not hello, not I'm sorry, not 20 years of anything. You've done well. Like a performance review. My mother stepped forward. Her face was thinner. Her hair, a careful highlighted silver blonde, was nothing like the dark brown I remembered. "We know you have a son, Serena. We'd like to meet him." I stared at her. "We'd like to reconnect," my father added, with the particular vocal texture of someone who has rehearsed this. I let them into my house. I'm still not completely sure why. Part of me wanted to hear it, the whole thing, whatever 20 years had produced in them, whatever this visit actually was. My father sat in my living room like he was assessing it for a listing, eyes moving over the custom shelving, the original paintings on the wall, the hand-woven rug I'd sourced from a textile artist in Oaxaca. My mother perched on the edge of my sofa with her ankles crossed. I stood in the doorway with my arms folded. "Our anniversary," I said. "That's why you're here." My father almost smiled. "November 15th, 50 years. We're hosting a celebration at the Rosewood Mansion, Dallas. 280 guests. The governor's office is sending a representative. Our entire church community will be there, the Rotary Board, colleagues from the firm." And what does any of that have to do with me? My mother uncrossed her ankles and recrossed them the other way. A tell. She was nervous. "People have been asking questions, Serena, about you, about what happened. You have to understand, over the years, people remember things. Someone from our church saw your magazine article 2 years ago. Questions have become persistent. So you need me to appear, make the family look whole." My father set his elbows on his knees. "We need your son. We've been telling people about him, our grandson. We described him to our friends as a young entrepreneur, very successful, following in the family tradition." The room went completely still. "Who told you I have a son?" "The Austin Business Monthly piece," my mother said, with a slight defensive edge. "It mentioned your child and your business." "It mentioned my daughter." Silence. My mother paused. "The article said child. We assumed, you assumed. We may have told people," my father said, his jaw tight, "that we had a grandson. We may have described him in some detail over the past several months." I looked at these two people. The two people who had pointed me toward a door in November 2004 and erased me from their lives like a billing error. Who had told 200 people a story about a grandson they had invented from a magazine article they hadn't bothered to read carefully. The full, stunning absurdity of it settled over me like weather. You've been describing a fictional grandson to 300 people for almost a year. We got carried away, my father said briskly, as if this were a minor administrative error. The point is, the party is November 15th. Your presence, and if I refuse... He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and withdrew an envelope, set it on my coffee table. We're prepared to offer $250,000 for 3 hours of your time. You attend the party, bring your son, my daughter, bring your child, take photographs with the family, allow us to introduce you to our guests. Then you return to Austin and your life continues as it is. I looked at the envelope. There is also the matter of the estate, my mother said quietly. Your share was removed from the trust in 2004. Your father has spoken with the attorneys. You could be reinstated. Equal shares. The property, the accounts, the investments. We've had it appraised recently. Total value is approximately $4.2 million. I thought about the studio apartment above the dry cleaner, the box of mac and cheese, the $18,000 that was the entire sum total of Jalen's life as measured by an insurance payout. The 3 rounds of rejections from the SBA. The night Maya was 9 and I was doing bookkeeping at midnight, and she came downstairs in her pajamas and asked me if we were going to be okay. And I said yes, absolutely yes, even though I wasn't entirely sure. 4.2 million. To perform for people who had thrown me out in the rain. And if I still refuse? My father's expression shifted. Not anger, something colder. We would prefer to handle this as a family. But if necessary, we could attempt to contact your child directly, explain the family history, help them understand where they come from. There it was. A threat wrapped in the language of concern. My parents hadn't changed at all. They'd just gotten older. You want to contact my daughter, I said slowly, without her consent, to tell her your version of who we are. We want to be a family again. My mother spread her hands with an expression of such practiced reasonableness that it almost took my breath away. Isn't that what you've always wanted, Serena? Family? I was about to answer, and then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Mom? I thought I heard voices. She appeared at the bottom of the staircase in an oversized UT Austin sweatshirt and paint-stained joggers, her dark curly hair loose around her shoulders. She was holding a fabric swatch she'd been working with. She'd been helping me prep samples for a client presentation. 19 years old. Her father's eyes, my chin, his steadiness, my stubbornness. She looked at the 2 strangers in our living room. My mother rose to her feet, and I watched her face do something I can only describe as a recalibration. Confusion, then a rapid internal calculation, then something close to horror. Who is this? This is Maya. I stepped forward slightly. My daughter. Your granddaughter. A long moment. Daughter. My father said it like a word in a foreign language. But the article, we thought, you said... The article said child. You assumed the rest. Maya's gaze moved between me and the 2 strangers. I watched understanding move through her face in real time, the way it does when something you've known abstractly your whole life suddenly becomes solid. These are them. It wasn't a question. Yes. She looked at my parents with an expression so controlled and precise that it made my chest ache. Not rage, not grief, just the cold clarity of someone who has been thinking about a moment for a very long time. You came here for a grandson, she said. Someone you could show off at a party. We wanted to reconnect with the family, my father began, after 20 years. Maya's voice didn't waver. After 20 years of pretending my mother went to study abroad. After 20 years of not calling, not writing, not sending a single birthday card for either of us. It was a complicated... She was 16. Something broke briefly through Maya's composure, just for a second. She was 16 and pregnant, and you threw her out in the rain. I know everything. She never hid any of it from me. I know about the letter. I know you notarized it and mailed it certified mail 3 days after you kicked her out, like she was a business transaction you were closing. My mother made a sound, not words, just a sound. You had a grandson in your minds for a year, Maya continued. Some fictional boy you invented. You've been bragging about him to your friends. And now you've shown up here with a check and a threat, and you're sitting on my mother's couch. She glanced at the envelope on the coffee table, offering her money to perform for your guests, to make your lie look true. My father straightened. Young lady. I'm not your young lady. quiet and final. I'm the granddaughter you decided not to know. I've been here my whole life. She turned to me. Mom. Yeah. They need to leave. She walked back up the stairs without another word. My parents stood in my living room, looking like two people who had arrived at a building expecting a particular door and found an entirely different structure. I walked to my front door and opened it. I'll be in touch, I said. Don't contact Maya directly. My father picked up the envelope from the coffee table. For a moment, I thought he was going to take it back. Instead, he set it on the entryway table. The party is November 15th, he said. We need an answer by the 10th. I watched their Escalade pull away. Then I closed the door, locked it, and went upstairs to find my daughter. That night, I went to my closet. On the top shelf, behind a stack of design binders, was a fireproof lockbox I'd had since 2007. I opened it for the first time in 6 years. Inside, the disinheritance letter. 3 pages. December 2nd, 2004. Robert Allen Hargrove in Patricia Ann Hargrove, signed in blue ink, notarized by a woman named Constance Price. My father's signature was the careful, deliberate signature of a man who knew signatures mattered. I sat on my bed and read all 3 pages slowly. Serena Lynn Hargrove voluntarily forfeits all interest in and claim upon the Hargrove family estate, and the Hargrove family accepts no legal, financial, or moral obligation to the aforementioned party or to any dependent thereof, now or in the future. Any dependent thereof. I had read those words 100 times over 20 years. They had been a wound for a long time. Then they became armor. Then they became simply evidence. I photographed every page, uploaded them to 3 separate cloud backups. Then I heard my door. Mom! Maya was leaning against the doorframe, arms wrapped around herself. She looked at the document spread on my comforter. Is that the letter? Yes. She sat beside me and picked up the first page. She read it quietly, taking her time. When she finished, she set it down very carefully. Any dependent thereof. She said it softly. That's me. That's you. She was quiet for a moment. Not crying. Maya rarely cried, which was exactly like Jalen and nothing like me. I want to be there, she said. Where? The party, whatever you're planning. I haven't decided what I'm planning. She looked at me with her father's steady eyes. Yes, you have. She wasn't wrong. 3 days after my parents' visit, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Texas area code. I almost didn't answer. Serena? A voice I hadn't heard in 20 years. Older, heavier, but unmistakable. Derek. A long pause. I know I have no right to call. I know that doesn't even begin to cover it. But I need you to hear some things before whatever happens next. Then talk. He did. He talked for an hour and a half. He told me what the years had looked like from inside the Hargrove house after I left. How our parents rarely mentioned me. How the story calcified into something official. Serena's abroad, finding herself. We're so proud. Until even he had started to half believe it, or at least stop questioning it. He told me about the magazine article. How our mother had found it 2 years ago through a mutual acquaintance and read only part of it before constructing the grandson story. How she'd started bringing it up casually at church, at Rotary dinners, at the country club. How the story had grown, detail by detail, until there was an entire fictional young man walking around in their social circles. She needed it, Derek said quietly. The idea of a grandson, a boy. I think she needed it to feel like the family was still whole. Like throwing you out hadn't cost her anything important. I didn't say anything. I was at the top of those stairs, Serena. His voice broke slightly on it. I was 22 years old and I stood at the top of those stairs and I watched our parents put a 16-year-old out in the rain and I didn't say a word. I have thought about that night every single year since it happened. Every single year. Why are you calling me now? A breath. Because watching them show up at your door with a check to buy a performance from you, and watching you have the life you've built, and knowing what it cost you to build it alone, I can't stay quiet anymore. If I do, I'm failing you twice. I thought about the boy who had taught me to ride a bike in our backyard on a Saturday morning in August 1993, who had slipped a $20 bill under my door the week before my choir concert and written for the flowers you like to get on a Post-it note, who had stood at the top of those stairs and done nothing. People are more than one thing. That doesn't mean you don't see all the things they are. There's something else, Derek said. The anniversary party. I don't know if you know this. Pastor Graves from Cornerstone is arranging a live stream component for the congregation. It's going to broadcast on the church's platform during the celebration. Family moment for the community. Live. To the congregation that had watched my parents' reputation get polished for 50 years. Derek. Yeah. Will you be there? Not for them. For me. The longest pause yet. Yes. And Serena, I'm bringing Camille. She's wanted to reach out to you for years. She's never forgiven herself for that night either. One more thing. Don't tell them I'm coming. I wasn't going to. The next morning, I called the number I still had for Miss Anita Reeves, our old neighbor in Dallas. She answered on the second ring. Serena? Baby, is that you? Her voice was the same. The particular warmth of it had not changed at all, and it hit me somewhere unexpected. I told her everything. My parents' visit, the fictional grandson, the party, the check. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Those people, she said finally. Lord, 20 years and not 1 inch of growth. Miss Reeves, I need to ask you something. That night, November 7th, 2004, you said you watched from your window. I watched that child stand on that curb for 11 minutes, she said, and her voice had gone firm, with a little duffel bag at her feet, in the cold, while her parents' lights went off one by one inside that house. I should have come out sooner. I've carried that. Do you still have your property camera footage? You had that camera on your garage, the one that covered the street. A pause, then a short laugh. Serena, I'm a retired librarian. I document everything on principle. Let me pull my archive. 19 minutes later, an email arrived. A still image, grainy but clear enough. Timestamp in the corner, 8:57 p.m., November 7th, 2004. A girl in a school cardigan standing on a curb with a duffel bag. The address numbers on the house behind her were partially visible. So were the lights going off. Is that enough? Miss Reeves asked when I called her back. More than enough. Whatever you need, Serena, you name it, I'm there. She paused. Would I need to go to Dallas? Only if you want to. Book me a flight, sweetheart. I've been waiting 20 years for someone to ask. The night before the party, I sat at my dining table with Maya and Carol. Maya had her laptop open, the Austin Business Monthly article pulled up alongside the church's Facebook page, where the anniversary party live stream details had already been posted. 280 guests confirmed. The church congregation, which numbered over 400 active members, would be watching online. The governor's office representative, the Rotary Board, the partners from my father's firm. They want a performance, Carol said, sipping her tea. They want you to walk in, play the role, validate the story, and disappear again. They want to use her, Maya said without looking up. Same as always. Carol looked at me. What do you want? I thought about it honestly. Not revenge. That wasn't it. Revenge requires you to still be organized around the person who hurt you. And I had spent 20 years deliberately building a life organized around myself and Maya instead. Revenge would mean they still had that kind of power. This wasn't revenge. This was documentation. This was taking the story they'd spent 50 years controlling and returning it to the person it actually belonged to. I want to stop being invisible, I said. I want to tell the truth. On their stage, in their room, in front of every person whose opinion they have spent their entire lives managing. Carol set down her cup. Then we make sure the truth is airtight. We had the disinheritance letter, photographed and backed up in 3 places. We had Miss Reeves's time-stamped security footage. We had Derek and Camille. We had the Austin Business Monthly article, which was factually accurate and publicly accessible. And we would have a live stream audience who had never heard my side. I'm standing next to you, Maya said. Maya, Mom. She finally looked up. They tried to erase me from existence before I was born. I'm not letting them tell their story to 300 people without standing there as proof of what they actually did. I reached across the table and took her hand. Carol raised her teacup. Then let's make sure you both look extraordinary. Saturday, November 15th, 2024. 7:04 p.m. The Rosewood Mansion on Turtle Creek was everything my parents would have selected. Crystal chandeliers, white linens ironed to an architectural flatness, floral arrangements in ivory and gold that had probably cost more than my first semester of community college. The kind of event that doesn't look expensive because everything in it is so precisely the right thing that expense becomes invisible. I know event design. This was extraordinarily good event design. I stood in the entrance hall with Maya beside me. She was wearing a deep burgundy dress she'd chosen herself, understated and precise. I was in black, a structured blazer, tailored trousers, heels I could move in. Carol had said, "Don't wear armor, wear authority." And that's what we'd done. You okay? Maya asked. I'm about to walk into my parents' 50th anniversary party to tell 280 people something they've been told the opposite of for 20 years, on a live stream. I exhaled. I'm terrified. That's not what I asked. I looked at my daughter, this 19-year-old who had grown up knowing exactly who her grandparents were and what they'd chosen, and who had built her strength out of that knowledge rather than letting it hollow her out. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. We walked in. The ballroom was arranged around a raised dais at the far end, where a podium had been set up between 2 large floral columns. A small camera crew was positioned to the left, the church live stream setup, a simple rig with 1 operator and a laptop showing the Facebook Live interface. I could see the viewer count already, 212 watching online. There were my parents. My father in a charcoal tuxedo, more stooped than I'd have predicted, but still carrying the posture of a man who has been the most important person in every room he's entered for 40 years. My mother in deep gold, her hair perfectly set, working the room with the efficiency of someone conducting business. They hadn't seen us yet. Heads were beginning to turn near the entrance, whispers moving outward from us like a current. Isn't that? She looks like... That's the woman from the Austin article. I thought Richard said she was in Europe. My father had just taken the microphone when my mother saw me. Her face did something I had never seen it do in 37 years. It simply broke. Not dramatically, not a gasp or a crumble, just a fracture, very fast, before she put it back together. Her hand found my father's arm. He followed her eyes, stopped mid-sentence. The room began to understand that something was happening. I walked toward the dais. The crowd parted. Derek appeared at the edge of the room, Camille beside him. They didn't try to intercept me. They stood still and watched. That was enough. My father recovered his voice. "Serena, we weren't—" I climbed the 3 steps to the platform. The live stream camera tracked me automatically. I could see the comment count climbing on the laptop screen. I held out my hand. He hesitated 1 full second. Then I took the microphone. "Hello, everyone." My voice was steady. That surprised me. "My name is Serena Cole. I was born Serena Hargrove. For those of you who don't know me, and I expect most of you don't, I'm Robert and Patricia's youngest child." The room went to near silence. I know many of you have been told that I went abroad after high school, found myself. That version of events has been in circulation for 20 years. A pause. It isn't true. Someone in the back of the room made a sound. On the evening of November 7th, 2004, my parents learned I was pregnant. I was 16 years old. I was a sophomore at St. Agnes. That same night, they asked me to leave the family home. They sent me out with a duffel bag and $43. I reached into the bag Carol was holding at the edge of the stage and withdrew the 3-page document. 3 weeks later, my father mailed me this: certified mail. Return receipt required, so he'd know I'd received it. I held it up toward the live stream camera. This is a notarized letter of disinheritance. It states that I forfeit all claims on the Hargrove family estate and that my parents accept no obligation, and I'm quoting, to the aforementioned party or to any dependent thereof, now or in the future. I let that sit. Any dependent thereof is my daughter, who was not yet born when this document was signed, who they attempted to legally erase before she had taken her first breath. I turned and extended my hand. Maya walked up the 3 steps to the platform. She stood beside me. My daughter, Maya Cole, 19 years old, UT Austin, sophomore. Your granddaughter, the one you've never met. The silence in that ballroom was the kind that has texture. The grandson you've been describing to your guests for the last year doesn't exist. He was constructed from a magazine article you didn't read carefully. You assumed. And then you built an entire story on that assumption and dined on it for 12 months. I could see the live stream comment section from where I stood. The count was climbing fast. 3 weeks ago, my parents came to my home in Austin. They brought a check for $250,000. They offered to reinstate me in the family trust. They asked me to come to this party and perform the role of the daughter who never left, in front of all of you, for 3 hours, and then go away again. My father stepped forward. "Serena, this is not—" "When is the right time, Dad?" I kept my voice level. "When is the right moment to tell the truth? You had 20 years. You had last month when you sat on my couch. When exactly were you planning to stop lying?" Pastor Graves stepped onto the edge of the dais. He was a steady man, silver-haired, with the particular gravity of someone who has sat with people in their worst moments for 30 years. "Robert," his voice was quiet, but it carried. "Is what she's saying true?" My father looked at the room, the Rotary Board, the partners from his firm, the mayor's representative in the 3rd row, the congregation watching on Facebook Live. I watched him look for the angle, the reframe, the version that saved him. He couldn't find it. "It was a difficult time," he said. "Decisions were made." "You threw her out in the rain," Derek said. The room turned. Derek stood at the edge of the dais, Camille beside him. He walked up the steps slowly. "I was 22 years old," he said, and his voice was rough. "I was standing at the top of those stairs the night they told my sister to leave. I watched it happen, and I did nothing." He looked at me. "That was my failure. But what they're telling you about Serena, that she went abroad, that everything was fine, that's 20 years of a deliberate story, and I let it stand. I won't do that anymore." Camille stood at the foot of the dais and nodded. From the back of the room, a woman stood, Ms. Anita Reeves, 65 years old, in a navy dress she'd bought specifically for this trip. Her chin was up. "I was the Hargrove family's neighbor for 14 years, she said. On the night of November 7th, 2004, I watched a 16-year-old girl stand on a curb in front of that house for 11 minutes before she walked away. I gave her a place to sleep that night, and not one member of the Hargrove family ever called to ask where she'd gone." She sat back down. The room was not silent anymore. My mother was crying. I had seen my mother cry once in my entire life, at her own mother's funeral, briefly, before she composed herself because people were watching. Now tears were moving through her careful makeup, and she was not stopping them. My father looked like a man standing in the wreckage of something he had built over 50 years, watching it come apart in real time. Pastor Graves placed a hand on his shoulder. "Richard," very quietly, "we're going to need to talk tonight." I turned back to the room, to the live stream camera. "I want to be clear about something." The room steadied. "I did not come here to destroy my parents. I came here because they tried to buy my silence 3 weeks ago, and I decided I was finished being silent. I came here because for 20 years, this community has known a story about me that was false, and you deserve to know the truth." I looked directly into the camera. 20 years ago, I left that house with nothing. Today, I run a design firm in Austin with 21 employees and $4.8 million in annual revenue. My daughter is a sophomore at UT, and she is extraordinary. We built that, alone, without the Hargrove family's name or money or connection. A pause. "I'm not asking for your pity. I never needed their approval to build a life. But I needed you to know the truth. And now you do." Maya stepped to the microphone. She was steadier than I expected, steadier than I would have been at 19. "I'm Maya," she said simply. "I know most of you don't know me, but I've known about all of you my whole life. My mom told me the truth about her family from the time I was old enough to understand. She never made them into monsters. She just told me what happened." She looked at Robert and Patricia Hargrove. "You could have known me. I've been here. You could have watched me grow up. My first day of school, my science fairs, my high school graduation. My dad died when I was 7, and I grew up without any grandparents because you chose your reputation over your daughter, and by extension, over me." Her voice cracked once, just once. "I don't know if you understand what that cost, but I need you to hear it from me directly. Not from a story about a grandson that doesn't exist. From me, the granddaughter who does." She handed the microphone back to my father. He took it without speaking. Maya and I walked off the stage.
The ballroom did not erupt dramatically. This wasn't a movie. But the sound of it changed. The low, continuous rumble of 280 people processing something they had not expected, pulling out phones, leaning toward neighbors, looking at the dais where Robert and Patricia Hargrove stood beside their anniversary flowers, in a silence that had weight. 61 guests left within 40 minutes. I learned that later from Derek. The governor's office representative was among the first to go. In the marble entrance hall, a woman I didn't recognize stopped in front of me. She was perhaps 60, a rotary blazer pin on her jacket. "I've known your father for 22 years," she said quietly. "I've heard him talk about reputation my whole career, how long it takes to build, how fast it goes." A pause. He was right about that part. She walked out. At the door, I turned back one last time. One more thing. The remaining guests, the dais, the live stream camera. I'm not going to sue anyone. I'm not contesting the will. The disinheritance papers they signed in 2004, I'm keeping them, but not as a weapon, as a record, as the truth. My father looked up. But if my parents, or anyone in their circle, continues to spread false information about me or my daughter, or if anyone attempts to contact Maya without her explicit consent, every document I have, every piece of evidence, everything you've seen tonight becomes permanently public. I have copies in 3 locations. So does my attorney. I looked at them one last time. Take care of yourselves. Carol appeared at my elbow. Ready? Yes. Maya took my hand as we walked through the doors into the November night. The air was cold and clean and smelled faintly of cedar. "Mom?" Her voice was smaller than usual. "Yeah? Was that the right thing to do?" I thought about 16-year-old Serena on a curb with a duffel bag, watching lights go off one by one in the house she'd grown up in. I thought about 18 years of building something from absolutely nothing. I thought about Maya at 7, asking me in her pajamas if we were going to be okay. "We told the truth," I said. "We set a boundary. We let them face what they chose." I pulled her into a hug. That's not revenge. That's justice. The live stream clip was shared 412 times before midnight. By Sunday morning, it was at 2,000. By Monday afternoon, someone had uploaded a condensed version to YouTube under the title, "Woman Tells the Truth About Her Family at Their Own Anniversary Party," and it had 63,000 views. Derek called Sunday at 9 a.m. with a full report. The Rotary Board had 3 emergency resignations from its social committee by noon on Sunday. My father's name had not appeared in a single comment thread without context. "The church," Derek said. "Pastor Graves called a private session with Mom and Dad Sunday morning. I wasn't there, but I heard it was significant." "Is Dad okay?" A pause. "He's not. Not because of what you did. Because he spent 50 years believing his reputation was something external to who he was. And now they're the same thing, and they're both in trouble." "That's not my responsibility." "No," Derek said. "It isn't." By Wednesday, 7 new client inquiries had come in to Ember and Company. People who had seen the Austin Business Monthly article 2 years ago and connected it, finally, to what they'd watched on the live stream. Priya Khatri, the journalist who'd written my original profile, called Thursday morning. "Serena, I don't know if you've been online this week. I've been keeping up. We'd like to run a follow-up piece, not about the party specifically, about the 20 years, the full story. People are connecting with it in a way that She paused. "I've been in journalism for 14 years. I've never had a response like the one your story is generating. People want to hear from you." I thought about it. "Let me call you back." I called Maya first. "People want to hear from you, Mom," she said immediately. "You spent 20 years being invisible because they told you that you were. That's over now." 2 weeks after the party, my phone rang at 8:22 in the morning. Oregon area code I didn't recognize. I answered. "Serena," my mother's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. The precise, careful diction she'd carried her entire life, slightly undone.
I'm not calling to apologize, she said. I'm not sure I know how to yet. I don't want to say the words if I don't mean them properly. Then why are you calling? A long pause. I've watched the video, the live stream, 11 times. She said it quietly, like it was a confession. And every time I watch it, I try to find the moment where I could have done something different. Not at the party, before, 20 years before. And I keep finding them. There are so many of them. I didn't fill the silence. Your daughter stood up there, she continued, and told me I could have known her. And I couldn't breathe. I keep thinking about that. Why are you calling? I asked again. Not unkindly, I genuinely wanted to know. The longest pause yet. Because I wanted to hear your voice. Because I have not heard it in 20 years. And I'm 64 years old, and it occurred to me recently that there are not an unlimited number of chances left. She was crying softly. I could tell from the unevenness of her breath. Your father is not well. Not medically, just he's not sleeping. He resigned from the church elder board. He's been quiet in a way I haven't seen before. I didn't do this to break him, Mom. I know that now. You did it because we gave you no other option. A breath. And you were right to. I held the phone and looked out my kitchen window at the garden Maya had planted last spring. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said. I'm not sure when I will be. Maybe not for a long time. Maybe in parts. That's more than I have any right to ask for. It is. We stayed on the line for another minute without speaking. Then she said softly, "Goodbye, Serena." Goodbye. I sat with the phone in my hand for a while after. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel healed. I felt something more honest than either of those. The particular weight of truth acknowledged. A door neither closed nor open. The beginning of a very long and uncertain road that might not arrive anywhere comfortable. It was real. That was enough.
Maya set the table herself that year. 14 places. Me at one end, Carol at the other, because she had presided over enough of our chaos to earn the seat. Ms. Reeves had flown up from Dallas and spent the morning teaching Maya's college roommate how to make her grandmother's sweet potato recipe. Derek and Camille sat across from each other, still finding their footing in the version of our family that was being rebuilt from scratch. Their daughter, 8 years old and relentless, had appointed herself the official table decorator and covered everything in paper leaf cutouts she'd made in the car. Maya's two closest friends from UT, a colleague from Ember and Company who had nowhere to go that year. My parents were not there. We hadn't reached that point. I didn't know if we ever would. But looking around that table, at the people who had chosen to be present, who wanted to know us, who had shown up not because of a name or a social calculation, but because they actually, genuinely wanted to be in the room, I understood something I'd been moving toward for a long time. I had spent years grieving a family that had never really claimed me. This table was full. Maya stood up before we ate. She unfolded a piece of paper. I wrote something. For Mom. She looked down at it, then back at the table. When I was about 9, I asked my mom why we didn't have grandparents the way other kids did. She sat me down and told me the truth. Not the softened version, not a story that made it easier. Just the truth. A pause. At the time, I didn't understand why she did that. I do now. She looked at me. She told me the truth because she wanted me to know that what happened wasn't about me. It wasn't about whether I was enough or worthy or valuable. It was a choice other people made, and their choice had nothing to do with my worth. Her voice was steady. I've thought about that every time I've ever felt like I needed someone's permission to be exactly who I am. every time I've walked into a room and wondered if I belonged. I heard my mom's voice in my head saying, "Their choice has nothing to do with your worth." She raised her glass. "To the family we build." Everyone at the table raised their glass. I did not cry, which surprised me because I cry more easily than I admit. I just looked at my daughter, this fierce and luminous person who had grown up knowing the worst of what people can do and had become radically, unflinchingly generous in spite of it, because of it. And I thought about Jalen on the floor of that diner booth, holding my hands and saying, "Whatever we decide together." And I thought, we did it. We actually did it. We are okay. We are more than okay. Before I let you go, I want to say something directly. My parents did not expect what they found when they came to Austin. They expected a prop, a piece of a story they'd written. They expected me to be the version of me that had been filed away in 2004, the teenager who needed something from them, who would weigh the offer, who still measured herself against their approval. They did not expect a woman who had already decided she was enough. They did not expect a daughter who had been raised to know her own value. They did not expect to be seen. And I think the hardest thing for them wasn't the public moment. It wasn't the live stream or the guests walking out or the fallout that followed. The hardest thing was seeing what they'd thrown away. Not in me, in Maya. In a 19-year-old girl standing on a stage telling 300 people that she'd spent her whole life knowing she'd been unwanted, and that she had made something extraordinary out of that knowing. They had tried to erase her before she was born, and instead they'd helped make her. That's not a happy ending in the way movies mean it. Robert Hargrove didn't rush the stage with tears of genuine remorse. Patricia didn't transform in a moment of grace. There's no bow. But here is what's true. I own a company that employs 21 people. My daughter is 19 and studying how spaces shape human beings, and she's going to be remarkable at it. My brother is, cautiously, my brother again. Ms. Reeves has a standing invitation to my Thanksgiving table forever. And the story that my parents told for 20 years, the one where I disappeared, where I was gone, where I didn't exist, that story is over. I exist. I have always existed. And I spent 20 years proving it to myself so thoroughly that when they finally showed up, I didn't need anything from them at all. That is the ending. Not perfect, not healed all the way through, not finished, but true. And true is enough. If you're still here, thank you for listening to this story. If any part of it felt familiar, if you've ever been told that your worth was conditional, that you had to earn your place, that someone else's version of your life was the true one, I hope something in these last 60 minutes gave you something to hold on to. You don't need their version. You are allowed to build your own. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video so more people can find it. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And drop a comment below. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and telling the truth? I'd genuinely love to know what you did. I'll see you in the next one.